Hi there, it's Misty. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I have this super fun card to share with you today featuring products from Neat and Tangled and some from Simon Says Stamp as well. I'm making this card for the Simon Says Stamp Wednesday challenge. The challenge this week is food and or drink, and the design team and I are using products from Neat and Tangled. I'm starting off with some Bristol Smooth cardstock, and I'm using Candied Apple, Abandoned Coral, and Wild Honey Distress Oxide inks. I also did a panel with some blues and greens, but I didn't like it as much as I did this one. So I'm going to put those sheets aside and use them on another card. When I sat down to make this card, I had originally planned on putting the Distress Resist spray on my cardstock before I added the Distress ink, but I completely forgot about it. But it's okay. I'm going to use this for another part of the card, and then next I'll do it with the Distress Resist spray. That's kind of a mouthful. I'd never used it yet, so I was really excited to give it a try. I'm going to quickly add some water drops just to give me that nice ink blended look. You can't do ink blending without adding water drops or some type of ink resist. Is that how you use that? Did I say that right? I have no idea. Sounded good to me though. You know what I mean. You catch my drift. I love distress inks. Okay, so here I'm going to do it again, but this time I'm going to put the Distress Resist spray on my cardstock. This was kind of interesting because I didn't know what to expect. So when I sprayed it, I kind of tried to shield my rest of my desk, and I'm glad I did because it almost felt like hairspray on my craft mat. So I just I just used a baby wipe to clean it up, but it was you know how hairspray gets on there and doesn't want to necessarily come off very easy. That's kind of how it felt on my craft mat. So I just took my my heat tool and dried it. I don't know if you're supposed to do that, but I didn't want to start ink blending on it and then have that spray that I just put on there smear all over the place. This is some pretty cool stuff though. As soon as you add the ink, you can see where that spray went. I really want to try it with a stencil too, so hopefully I will do that in the near future. So I'm going to do the same colors. Started with the Candied Apple, moved on to Abandoned Coral, and then I'll finish it off with some Wild Honey. I really like these three colors together. So now it's looking a lot like the Emboss Resist technique. And where that Distress Resist spray went, it was kind of dull with the ink blending over the top of it. So I just took a microfiber cloth and just lightly rubbed over the top of the surface. And it really, I love how it looks. It brings out, you can see where the ink is resisting really well. I think this would be really good for like a galaxy or a night sky. All right, now I'm going to color my cute little weenies here. I thought I could just freehand it here with an acrylic block like we all had to do before the Misties were invented, but I just didn't like it. It wasn't bold enough for me. So I pulled out the mini Misty and stamped it a bunch of times. I just like that bold, crisp look that you get when you stamp it multiple times. And I just can't do that with an acrylic block. So I stamped this out several times. I don't know why. I guess I used some for practice to decide what Copic colors I wanted to use, but I stamp them out, I cut them out, sometimes I color them, and then they go into a box, and I never look at them again because I completely forget I have them. So I'm trying to not do that anymore. And here I did it again, but it's a work in progress. I'm trying to not do it anymore. Better luck next time. For that first hot dog, you can see I wrote it down. I used E11, 13, and 15, but it was a little too light, so I decided to use 13, 15, and 17, and that's what I am doing here on the left, and I like that color much better. For the bun, I went with E31, 33, and 35. I left the condiment on the hot dog uncolored for now because I didn't know exactly how this card was going to come together, and I didn't want the color to clash with the rest of the card. So I hadn't decided yet if I wanted to put ketchup on them or mustard. I personally do not like mustard, so I didn't really want to color them yellow, but you know, I had to go with what looked best for the card. Nobody in my house likes mustard. Ketchup we can do, but mustard, no. Except for my son. He doesn't like ketchup or mustard or mayonnaise. He's kind of weird like that. This die is called Pebbles, and it's by Simon Says Stamp. And I had never used this one either, so I was excited to use this die. I really like it. I had a hard time doing this, but I'm going to end up chopping up this panel here. I don't know. I'm so particular about things. I couldn't just use the top or the bottom of the panel. I wanted that particular middle section of it. So I cut off the top and I cut off the bottom, and I took just the part I wanted there. Now I'm going to shift back to that first panel I did with just distress inks and water, and I'm going to add some shimmer spritz and sparkle to it and give it a nice pretty shimmer. I'm going to use the Journaling Alphas die by Neat and Tangled for the first part of my sentiment. I really like these dies. I was glad to add this to my alpha dies because they're tall and they're thin, and it's just a really cool look. I'm going to heat emboss the second part of my sentiment. This is my anti-static powder. And then I'm going to only ink up a portion of the stamp. I know a lot of people cut their stamps, but I try to not do that if I can because I can never seem to line things back up. You know, everybody says you can just line it back up and it looks like you never cut it, but I just can't. I have a hard time with that. I mean, I will if I have to, but I try not to. This part of my sentiment is from Playful Messages by Simon Says Stamp, and the banner die I'm using is from My Favorite Things Blueprints 27. And since the banner die was longer than my sentiment, I did some partial die cutting. In order to do that, I didn't cut the banner all the way. I let half of it hang off my cutting plates so that it would only cut one side, and then I flipped it around and put that banner end up next to the period at the end of the sentiment and let the side I already cut hang off my cutting plate so that it wouldn't cut it again, and just cut the banner end. I hope that makes sense. I'm horrible at explaining things sometimes. After I butchered my background, I then decided I wanted a border at the top and the bottom. So I just used that piece that I cut and glued it down, and then the bottom part is the portion that you're going to see through this Pebbles die. No one will ever know that I cut it up. I used some double-sided tape for the top part of the card front, and then for the bottom I just used some liquid adhesive so I could put it, you know, randomly here and there. I just didn't want it to lift anywhere. I wanted it to lay flat against my background. I'm going to take a ruler and I'm just going to try to line up the letters the best I can, make sure it's even on both sides, and just make sure they are in a straight line. I used my liquid adhesive for the letters as well. It's the Nouveau Deluxe adhesive that's in my syringe. And that way I have a little bit of wiggle room when I put my letters in place. If you don't have a syringe, the Zig 2A glue pen is a good alternative. So once I now have a better idea of how my card is going to look, this is when I decided what color I wanted to color the condiment on the hot dogs. And I went with the mustard just because it looked better with this card, I thought. But I think both could have worked. The red could have worked because of the candied apple, but the yellow just, I don't know, it just matched better, I guess. I do end up coloring one of the hot dogs and put ketchup on him, and I put it on the inside of the card with the part of the sentiment I cut off from the I'm obsessed with you. I put that in the inside of the card. So on the outside it says, frankly, I'm obsessed with you. Get it? Frankly. And then on the inside it says, in a non-creepy way, and then it has the other hot dog on the inside. I thought it was cute. Now I'm adding some craft foam to this part of the sentiment, and I'm using score tape to put on both sides of the craft foam. I decided to pop up the sentiment and the hot dogs since I don't have any dimension with the rest of the card. My other option would have been to pop up the card front and probably leave the sentiment and the hot dogs flat on the card front. I liked it this way better though. And yes, I know I went overkill on the foam squares on the back of my hot dogs, but I just never know when I'm going to mail these. And the mail can be pretty brutal on our cards sometimes. Anyway, all right, so some finishing touches here. I'm going to add Nuvo drops here. This is in rose water, and you can't see it in the photo, which I'm kind of bummed about, but I put the Spectrum Noir glitter pen on the mustard, and then I put glossy accents over the top of that. It turned out pretty cute. And the frankly is sparkly because I put that shimmer spritz on it, so unfortunately you can't see that either. And that's my video for this week. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this card that I made for the Simon Says Stamp Wednesday challenge. All of the supplies that I used are listed and linked in the description below. You can find more details on my blog as well. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't already. And while you're there, click on that little bell icon so that you won't miss any of my videos. I usually post one video a week. I'll see you next Wednesday with another card. Thanks. Bye.